there was a tremendous deal of uncertainty about whether or not this was going to work here. And people now don't understand how tenuous it was. And it was never more tenuous than that Game 4, because what that did was Hurricanes go back up to Jersey. They win Game 5. They come back for Game 6. It sells out. They get beat. They get a standing ovation for the last 2 minutes of regulation. It was the first real connection between the team and the city and the Triangle. It was the bond that was built, that built the bridge for everything that happened after that. And if Kapanen and Brindamore don't combine on that goal at the end of Game 4, none of it happens. And it's a very different future.
Holly Wilver and the fans here in Raleigh with both anthems. How many speeches would coaches have made to their teams this year? You take this back to rookie camp, and it's 270 or so days ago. Rod Brindamore will face off against Michael Pekka.
Welcome to the Canes Corner Podcast with your host, Adam Gold. The Canes Corner Podcast is a part of the Capital Broadcasting Podcast Network. And now, here's Adam.
Welcome to the 25th anniversary Canes Corner Podcast, brought to you by the Aluminum Company of North Carolina. I'm Adam Gold. This is the 9th and final episode, for now anyway, in our look back at the move from Hartford here to Central North Carolina and the significant deals, games, people, and memories that will forever be etched in our minds. We began this journey where the franchise was born, Hartford, Connecticut, at one point the insurance capital of the world. We explored the reasons for the move, those that were left behind, and what was to come in Raleigh, by way of Greensboro. Along the way, there were growing pains, doubts, and a nearly asphyxiated mascot. An arena was built, so too was a fan base. A cup was won, and a legend was created. So as we try to put what amounts to a bow on the 25th anniversary of the Carolina Hurricanes, we'll do so examining the most significant games the Canes have ever played. I'm joined by longtime News and Observer columnist and former Hurricanes beat reporter Luke DeCock and Carolina's Vice President of Communications and Team Services, Mike Sundheim. Each of us was given a homework assignment. Come up with 5 games that tell the story of the last 25 years. Yes, just 5 each. Obviously, there was overlap, a lot of it, to be honest. So there were a lot of games left out, and I'm sure you could come up with your own list that didn't include any of the 10 or so that we came up with. But we've only got about 45 minutes here, so let's get started. And I'm going to let Mike Sundheim take the first draw.
Number 5, I really struggled with. There were a lot of ones I could have gone with. I ended up going with Eastern Conference Final Game 6 at Toronto.
Right.
Sundin had tied it up about 20 seconds to go.
Yeah.
All of the NHL people were very excited around us.
I actually just watched the clip of that. I'll talk about it in a second.
And then Marty Jean, to Steve Levy's dismay, punched us into the final, assisted by the great Josef Vasicek.
Why do you say to Steve Levy's dismay?
Well, I don't think the call was one of great excitement for the Carolina Hurricanes.
Well,
Carolina Hurricanes, question mark. We're going to the Stanley Cup final? Question mark.
Shot in by Jelena Softon. Erickson there, bumped by Svoboda. Behind the nets, going away. Cedric, did they score? Martin Jelena in sudden death overtime. And it's strange but true. Folks, the Carolina Hurricanes are going to the Stanley Cup Finals. Wow.
Well, I think that year, especially in the playoffs, and especially the teams that Carolina beat, New Jersey, which was really the gold standard in the sport at least in the East, for that period of time, and then Montreal, Toronto, it was no way it's going to be Carolina. They also might be looking at ABC at the series, might be looking at it from a ratings perspective. I'm like, man,
Detroit, Toronto. They had it in pen.
And no question about that. I was watching the clip from the CBC. Now, the CBC is the Canadian national rights holder, so this is supposed to be a national broadcast. and goal mouth scrum, Sundheim shovels in the puck, bedlam. And I get it. It should have been bedlam. No matter who scores the goal, should have been bedlam. Empty net at the other end, extra attacker. We tied it up. It's a potential elimination game. We're going to overtime in game 6. 8 minutes in, it was like, Jelena scores. I'm like, what?
And Jelena is back out to Carolina. To center. Rips a puck into the lead zone. Eriksson back there. And Gilney takes it from him. Throws it behind the net. Masachuk intercepted. Center pass. They score! I think it was Jelena who knocked it in. And Carolina is in a celebration mode now for sure. The building is shocked. With that loose play inside the Leaf line, that ends up in the Carolina goal. And I believe it was Martin Jelena who poked it home in overtime at 8 minutes and 5 seconds. And Carolina will go on to the Stanley Cup Championship. The Leafs' gallant effort and a gallant try in this playoff year is over.
Well, give Carolina credit. 6 goals against in 6 games. Never mind how many you score. If you can hold the high-scoring team to 6, you got a great chance of winning.
I'm like, wait a second. You guys are... Is this a Maple Leafs broadcast? I guess it was. But it was, they were so upset that in the postscript, as they're talking about it, they're praising the Leafs. And then they said, well, you have to give the Hurricanes credit too. Like, yeah, they won the series.
Won all 3 games in Toronto.
All 3 games in Toronto and won all game 6s on the road.
Sorry, I actually think and this is why I got this wrong, the Eye of the Storm game was a bigger game in that series, but that's just me. I also understand why Mike, in particular, wouldn't have enjoyed the ending of Game 6.
I did.
Shutting it right up.
Come on.
I took a look at some of those people on the way back out, the people who had been very excited about Matt Sundheim scoring.
Oh, you feel free to elaborate.
No, just leave it at that.
You can't leave it at that.
Because we were getting ready to go on the, like when you win a series like that, you go on the ice and the interviews happen on the ice. So at the end of the 3rd period, I'm there with all these NHL people getting ready to go on the ice for the presentation of the Prince of Wales Trophy and everything else. And then Sundheim scored, and the excitement wasn't just on the broadcast and in the crowd, it was also in that little hallway where I was standing right next to them. So I went back in the room, and then when Jelena tipped it home, I gave a little glance on the way back out to the ice.
Good for you. Good for you. Luke, what's number 5?
Number 5 is my non-playoff game. It's the 2011 All-Star game.
To see the starting lineup for Team Stahl in white, Corey Perry, Eric Stahl, Rick Nash up front, Zdeno Chara, and Mike Green in back. No lack of offense there. Nick Lidstrom and Shea Weber will be the defensemen for Team Lidstrom, the blue team. Marty St. Louis, Brad Richards, and Steven Stamkos up front. Cam Ward of Carolina for Team Stahl in goal. Marc-Andre Fleury of Pittsburgh for Team Lidstrom, and we are underway.
Just a moment when Raleigh was at the center of the hockey universe. At the time, it was sort of the Hurricanes were in the playoffs, at the moment in January 2011. Mm-hmm. They'd gone to the playoffs in 02 and 06 and 09. They'd been close in 07 and 08. Cam Ward was an all-star. Eric Stahl was an all-star. Jeff Skinner was the toast of hockey, the line around the convention center to get his autograph. Long delayed all-star game as the NHL put it off. And Raleigh did what it had to do in terms of hotels and convention centers, transportation. I mean, people don't remember this, but the infrastructure investment that the city of Raleigh made, really Scott Dupree at the Sports Bureau. You walked out of the party at the convention center and it was like boarding planes. There were signs with this bus for this hotel, and you didn't have to wait, and one bus left and another pulled up. And believe me, that's not only very difficult to do, but people notice that, or they notice that they didn't notice it. The hockey it was a great game. The intro was great. one of the better All-Star games in terms of entertainment in a lot of ways, other than that stupid Guardians of the Game crap they did. But in a lot of ways, for a franchise that 10 years earlier had everyone thought was moving somewhere, to host an event like that, host it well, seamless in a lot of ways, and everybody walked away feeling good about it. Yeah. To me, that sort of cemented the Hurricanes, not only in North Carolina, but in the NHL. That was the moment where it was like, oh, it's not just going to be in the playoffs. This is a hockey town. Now, of course, that also was the demarcation line where the franchise plunged off a cliff into 8 years in the wilderness. But at that moment,
I don't know what you're talking about.
You could legitimately say this was this had worked. This was a hockey market. And to me, the fact that it wasn't a playoff game, that it was something totally elective, is what sort of puts it on my list.
They're still trying to get Jeff Skinner that goal in the third period. Yeah. They're still trying to get him that goal. All right, number 5 for me is my non-playoff game, but it's a regular season game. And it's game 71 of the 2019 season. And part of it for me is also the play-by-play of it. So I believe I was in Minneapolis at the Final Four. I'm pretty sure that's where I was. Wherever I was at the Final Four. I was watching it in a bar on my laptop. And John Forsland is doing play-by-play of this game, which is a win over the Devils, and keeping up to date on what's going on in Washington, because if the Capitals beat the Canadiens and the Hurricanes won, it was a wrap. Playoffs were secured.
The puck is available to Carl, hunted down by Pavelzaka. Big point, Severson. Awaiting near wing corner. His shot stopped by Mrazek. The rebound, Williams off the boards. With touch, under a minute left. 18 seconds left in Washington. 2-1, the Caps lead. 50 seconds left here. 3-1, the Canes on top. Severson now through the middle. Taken care of by Agostino. Aho all over him. Will Butcher gets to it. 39 seconds left. Aho from Teravainen in front of the Devil bench. Killing some time. 33 seconds left. Close to the empty net. Blocked by Carrick. 16 seconds left in Washington. 27 seconds left here. Out to center now. It's Bastian to the near wing for Stafford. Bastian shot blocked by Falk. 6 seconds left in DC. Mrazek a dandy. A blocker save. 15 seconds left here. Centered in front. Mrazek from Teravainen. He'll freeze. 10 seconds left. And guess what? It's over in Washington. The Capitals have first place in the Metropolitan Division. They have defeated the Montreal Canadiens 2-1 in regulation. Faceoff will be in the far circle to the right of Mrazek. Stahl wins it back. 8 seconds left. Knocked down by Carrick, deflected wide. 3 seconds left. The wait is over. Finally, the Carolina Hurricanes are on their way to the Stanley Cup playoffs.
I don't even know if the game was that good, but the moment for me was off the charts because it was a decade. You were talking about wilderness. It was a decade of nothing and rumors of Quebec or wherever they were going to move. And,
anytime the Canadians came into town.
Right. So, but that game was just next level for me, and then also just listening to John do it. Number 4 for you, Mike.
Number 4, I had the Shock at the Rock. April 28th, 2009. 2 minutes to go. We're down a goal. Mm-hmm. Pretty much making plans for maybe taking a vacation with my family. My wife was due with our first child a month later, and all of a sudden, UC Jokinen scores, and then a minute later, Eric Stahl scores, and we're moving on. Marty Berdeur's angry, and fans are flipping us off at the Prudential Center, New Jersey.
.42 on the clock in Game 7. Samsonov cutting away from Havlat, attempting a pass that goes over the top of Brodeur. Getting to it, Jokinen back to the point. Joni Pikkanen inside for Jokinen. He gets it back all the way across. Great play by Havlat, but not out. Now it's Gleason. His shot blocked by Parise. Gained by Brindamore. Held in by Seidenberg from his knees. He sets up Pikkanen. Across they go. They score! What a goal! Carolina, UC Jokinen. They've tied it with 1:20 left in regulation time. Stahl, Whitney, LaRose, Pickenen and Gleason come out for Carolina. Off the draw. Back of the goal, Motto. Moved off for Shanahan. Through the center ice area. Gleason is back in his own zone. Out to center for Chad LaRose. A chance for Stahl. Stahl walks in. He shoots one. He scores! Hey, what do you say? Eric Stahl and the Canes have a 4-3 lead in Game 7.
No franchise ever got in Marty Brodeurs' kitchen the way the Hurricanes did.
That's right.
It's one of the great hockey anomalies of all time.
Yeah,
the stick smashing in 06, the tantrum. I still use that game, by the way, as an example when I speak to like Rotary clubs or whatever. Like, you want to do my job? Okay. There's 3 minutes left in Game 7 and the season's about to be over. And you have to file at the buzzer. So you have 600-something words, 700 words in your laptop. And then UC Jokinen scores. And you're like, okay, well, I can use some of that, and I have the overtime intermission to get the column ready if the Hurricanes win. And then Eric Stahl scores, and the next thing you know, the handshakes are going on, and your phone is ringing with every copy editor that we still had on the staff asking where the column is. Yep. You want to do this job? Write 700-word stream of consciousness in 98 seconds.
I have that on my list as well. Luke, is it on your list? It has to be on your list, right?
It's not on my list. It was definitely under consideration.
What a contrarian.
I had a hard time sorting through the 09 games because to me, the Scott Walker goal in Boston was in its own way just as good.
That was an either or for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what's number 4 for you?
I kind of shut down. Number 4 for me is the Capitals game, Game 7 in 2019.
What an effort by Justin Williams once again tonight in a Game 7. Wilson couldn't get his stick on the puck. Hurricanes keep it alive. Williams towards the net. Score! They score! What do you say? The Canes win in overtime. It is 7th heaven, and the Carolina Hurricanes have advanced to the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs.
To eliminate the Capitals, my number 1 is not going to be on either of your lists. I'll tell you that right now. So we can build some drama here. But yeah, I mean, for the same reason Mike has it number 3, and you probably have it on your list too, Adam. I mean, the emergence of a new era and vanquishing the defending champs and shoving it up Todd Reardon, that sanctimonious things I can't say on the radio. And you know, the arrogance of the entire Capitals organization, and filtered down to the way they deal with media and visiting media and all that. It was, you know, not that you're rooting for the Hurricanes, but it was also nice to see the Capitals lose. I don't say that. Like, all those years with the Devils as a visiting writer, they had a reputation of sort of being media unfriendly because of Lou and whatever. I loved covering series against the Devils. It was awesome. Their room was great. Their PR people would get you whatever you need. It may be completely different being a visiting writer than covering that franchise day to day. The Canadians, terrible reputation in some ways. Certainly a pain in the butt to deal with if you're a visiting team, and they'll put up whatever hurdles and throw bananas on the ice. Their fans, in the case of Kevin Weeks in 2002. But the locker room was awesome. The people who worked for the team were awesome to me. You know, Bob Gainey and the PR people. But the Capitals, everything was just so much harder than it needed to be.
Todd Reardon losing is always good. He was perpetually sour.
Things were said on Twitter after that.
That is Twitter. Things are always said on Twitter.
Things were said.
I think my favorite part of that series were the handshake between Ovechkin and Williams. That series against Washington was just the start of that playoff run. They would go on to sweep the Islanders before running into a buzzsaw in Boston. But beating the Caps, especially the manner in which it was accomplished, winning all 3 games on home ice, restoring PNC Arena as the preeminent home ice environment in the NHL, was the culmination of 4 months of spectacular play. Keep in mind, heading into a New Year's Eve game at home against the Flyers, the Hurricanes were just 15, 17, and 5 at the bottom of the Eastern Conference. They went 31, 12, and 2 the rest of the way, then pulled off the shocker of the opening round, sending the defending champs packing in double overtime in their building. Another shocker coming up, something known in these parts as the Scott Walker game, after the break. Welcome back to the 25th Anniversary Canes Corner podcast. I'm Adam Gold. After winning the Stanley Cup in 2006, Carolina failed to even make the playoffs the following 2 years. Midway through the 2008-2009 season, Peter Laviolette, the coach who won the Stanley Cup, was fired. And Paul Maurice, the first coach in Hurricanes history, and the man who led them to that incredible run in 2002, was brought back to see if he could make something out of a team that had more than enough talent to get to the postseason. In the second round, Carolina met up with the Boston Bruins, the top seed in the East. And with a surprising 3-1 series lead back in Boston, looking to close it out on the road, the game was predictably feisty. In the third period of what was a 4-0 Bruins win, tempers were high. Carolina's Scott Walker, a rugged, agitating forward, punched Boston's Aaron Ward in the face. Yes, that Aaron Ward, the one who scored the first goal in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals in 2006. Well, Walker scored just 5 times during an injury-plagued regular season and had not scored in any of the previous 13 playoff games. Well, not yet. Scott Walker is my number 4. Just the fact that Walker scored the goal.
No, it was so much going on there. Much going on.
Just tremendous. And I remember the backstory of Aaron Ward, who took the punch from Scott Walker, calling me. I wish I'm not making this up. Like wanting to come on. Those people know I live there.
Nick Pauline. This way, Dennis Seidenberg. Stepping in, Whitney. Ray Whitney tees it up. Thomas the save, the rebound. They score! They score! And guess who? Scotty Walker is the hero! Carolina is on their way to the Eastern Conference Finals on a goal by Scott Walker with 1:14 left in overtime.
It was really good if you happen to be watching it and you saw the Nesson highlight and Jack Edwards had to eat it.
Who later on would imply that Andrei Svechnikov deserved to have his knee busted by Zdeno Chara.
Seidenberg. Whitney gains the line. The drive on Thomas Walker. The rebound scores! Scott Walker, the villain, breaks Boston's heart. Carolina has beaten the 1 seed and the 3 seed. The Hurricanes are Destiny's darlings in 2009. A lot of people thought that Scott Walker shouldn't have been a part of Game 6 and maybe not even a part of Game 7, but he was the biggest part of Game 7.
I got to amend something. It didn't make my list, and I have just had an awakening.
Uh-oh.
And we all should have. The Nino Niederreiter for Victor Rask trade should have made our top 5 trades. One of us.
Cross-ice pass, a tough one. Off a stick, unattainable for Green. Keens are out. Lead pass. Niederreiter bears in. He scores! Hey, hey! What do you say? Nino Niederreiter. 3-1. Carolina.
This is less about the highlight reel goal and more about the buzz that's back in town. The trade of the year, Nino Niederreiter.
Because why not? That was Nino making it a 3-1 game the night the Hurricanes wrapped up their first playoff spot in a decade, April 2019.
That was abject larceny.
In the first top 5 trades in Hurricanes history that impacted the team that made it, and the Nino for Rask trade did. And
that's the only time that Victor Rask will be mentioned on this podcast.
Wow.
I just remember Mike Russo going through our roster trying to figure out who the Wild were getting back and just never making it to Victor Rask.
Well, he's a center. Find the line.
20 goal scorer in the league.
Find the line.
Currently residing in the looking for a contract file.
I loved Victor Rask in his first couple of years. My only problem wasn't that they signed him, was that they gave him 6 years and they didn't have to give him 6 years. You could have given him 3. You and I talked about this.
Regime failure.
It was not good, and I was ridden by Kane's Twitter for my take on that on that contract. I'm like,
that's one of the rare things you and I have agreed on over the years, I think.
I think we've probably agreed on more. Mike, game number 3 for you.
Game number 3, I have the Game 7 in Washington.
Okay.
Brock McGinn, previously discussed. double overtime. Cathartic in many ways.
They were the better team, really, the entire third.
And then
both overtimes. It was a matter of time before they did that. All right, Luke, game number 3 for you.
I'll just say, the crazy thing about Game 7 that Mike would get too, we had to go up, all of us, team, media, everybody, because the next series was going to start 48 hours later. We had to pack for 6 days for that Game 7. Number 3 for me, and this is probably number 1 or 2 for you guys, I get that, is the miracle at Molson. Mm-hmm. The incredible comeback against the Canadians. Everything about that. Jose Theodore had been impregnable. Hurricanes broke him permanently, some might argue.
Yes.
In that
Shattered.
series.
My wife is still not happy.
Okay.
She's not. I've got 4 Theodore sweaters hanging in our guest room closet, okay. Luke.
So
4.
Nick, 4. And then
that might be too much information.
Yeah, let's move on to the secret weapon. Nicky Wallin scoring the overtime goal and beginning really a legacy, career-long legacy of scoring goals like that. And here's the part that doesn't really make the paper. So the second intermission of that game, Montreal's about to go up in the series, and they're Theodore, Hurricanes can't buy a goal in Theodore. And I'm walking to go get a hot dog, and all the Montreal writers, or I'm writing, and they're all walking to go get a hot dog, and they're all like, oh, your team played well. It was a good series, blah, 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 blah. And then the Hurricanes force overtime, and they're all coming back from the press room going, well, the Canadians are done. The Habs are cooked. The series is over. And then the Hurricanes score to win it. So it's just sort of fun watching the swing in emotions in a very emotional hockey city. And I love Montreal. I love the Bell Center. I love covering games there, and to watch that happen in that environment, all that BS about the ghosts of the Forum and all that crap, and to watch it all just kind of get shoved aside because Eric Cole and Bates Battaglia and Nicky Wallin were going to pull off some kind of a miracle. It's pretty remarkable.
Shot Bates Battaglia, back it goes for Sammy Kapanen. Inside it's Ron Francis. Great pass. Hill scores! John Hill getting the pass from Ron Francis on the one-timer. Carolina stays put on the power play, and they finally beat Theodore. Now it's Brindamore over the line inside. Oleg Petrov is back defensively for Montreal. They'll play it off the wall. Boulis is shoved by Nick Wallin. Battaglia takes control, feigning on a shot. Now Wallin rolling it deep. Here's Brindamore. Carl Dykhouse getting to it. Battaglia has control. Inside it goes. Knocked down by Brindamore. On the cycle game, here come the Canes. The pass detected by Gilmore. And the Canadians try to clear, but don't. Held in by Brindamore. Now Battaglia walks, holds, shoots one. He scores! Short side on Theodore. Bates Battaglia has brought the Carolina Hurricanes within 1. Brindamore, Cole, Battaglia, Francis, Kapanen, Hill. Kapanen walks, shoots. It's tipped just wide. Francis behind the goal. Ronnie Francis tries to make it happen. To the point it comes to Kapanen. Hammered by Hill, it's tipped. Brindamore after it. Battaglia turns, shoots. Theodore to save the rebound. What do you say? Eric Cole, the Canes have tied it. Channel Lesicek, Wallin and Maluk on defense. Bill Lindsay out to take the face off. It's lost by Lindsay. Wallin shot. Hey, what do you say? Nick Wallin, the Carolina Hurricanes have tied the series.
Sean Hill scores in the first minute of the third period to break the ice. Eric Cole scores. I believe the net was empty with less than a minute left. Cole scores to force the overtime, and then Wallin. Bates Battaglia scored a goal. Actually, it wasn't that long after Hill's goal, I don't believe. It was a few minutes later, I think.
Yeah, it took the Cole goal to tie it up. But
right.
It was Hilly and Bates, yeah.
And then obviously the Wallin. But yeah, they completely broke Theodore and the team. It wasn't just Theodore.
Yeah.
And Carolina won game 5 in Raleigh 5-1, and then they
beat
scored
the pants off them in game 6. Michel Therrien up there with his Century 21 mustard jacket getting double minor penalty for barking at the refs. I mean, I don't know I've ever seen a team lose its cool so abjectly as the Canadians did in Game 6 of that series. I mean, it was just like a complete and total nuclear meltdown. Man, did they get savaged for it.
They did. They absolutely did. And, you gave up almost nothing for 3 games and 2 periods.
Wasn't there a penalty box?
Yeah, who was it? It was a center. Smashed the glass in the penalty box. Slammed the door shut and smashed the glass in the penalty box.
Completely came undone.
The other thing people forget about that series, it was either game 1 or 2. I can't remember which one. The Canadians argued so much about Jeff O'Neill's hit from behind on Sheldon Surrey that they got O'Neill suspended for a game. They did everything but put Surrey in a body cast. And then he was out. As soon as O'Neill was suspended, he was back on the ice in practice.
That is a complete stunner. All right, number 2, Mike Sundheim.
That's where I have Miracle at Molson.
Mm-hmm. It's on my list as well, so we're obviously not gonna talk about it again.
I agree with Luke. That the Bell Center is my favorite place on the road to see us play, especially in the playoffs. Just an incredible atmosphere, and they do a really nice job.
Yeah,
very emotional.
Okay, what is your number 2, Luke?
My number 2 is Mike's number 1.
Okay.
Number 2 is Game 7 in 06, obviously Stanley Cup, Justin Williams, Aaron Ward, puck over the glass, surviving that. The Kevin Adams, I think it was Craig Adams non-goal. Everything that obviously happens, you win a Stanley Cup, the crowd standing the whole game. I mean, we could spend less time talking about this one because it's so fabled. Is that your number 1, Adam?
I actually intentionally left it off the list because I knew it was going to be. Would have been too easy to put it, so I went a little bit off the board for some of the things. But
yeah, so my number
I'm not
1,
arguing with it, of course.
There's very few dates I know off the top of my head when a game is played. That one I will always know what day that was, and it's one of the greatest days of my life.
Ladd in close, trying to get it from Cullen. Gives a back pass to Cullen in the corner. Cullen leaves it for the side of the net, and it's headed right into the doorstep area for Aaron Ward to score! A quick slap shot off the right side as Aaron Ward let a screen shot go from the top of the far circle. And at 1:26, the Hurricanes take a 1-0 lead as Cullen and Ladd and Recchi were in there forechecking, and Ward got the pass off the right side and swatted it through a screen and right to the marker.
Frankie Cabrera would score in the second period to make it 2-0. Edmonton would make it 2-1 early in the third. However, thanks to the heroics of rookie goaltender Cam Ward, that was as close as the Oilers would get, and it was a future captain that put the cherry on top.
All-important draw, won by Stoll. To the point, Congers had his pass deflected off the glass. Big play by Stoll. It ends up along the near boards. Mayhem, puck bunted down. Hurricane steal. Stoll gets it up the middle to Williams. He's walking in on an open net, and he won the Stanley Cup. Justin Williams has won the Stanley Cup for the Carolina Hurricanes. In all likelihood, with an empty netter in 1859 on a clearing pass out of the zone. You won't have to see the clocks go to 0-0-0 now. And the fans will tell you an historic moment in Carolina Hurricanes Hartford Whaler franchise history as the empty netter by Justin Williams has all but sealed the emotional drama and the frustrations and the heartbreak of 9,394 days of National Hockey League existence.
It would become a career habit for Williams, that Game 7 magic. A couple of off-the-board choices from Luke and me after the break. Welcome back to the 25th Anniversary Canes Corner podcast. I'm Adam Gold. It might seem anticlimactic to already have the Stanley Cup clinching game in the rearview mirror, but that won't be the last we mention it, I assure you. Truth be told, the 25-year history of the Carolina Hurricanes cannot be told without the constant reminder of the one person whose fingerprints are on virtually every single significant moment in this franchise in North Carolina, as we get near the end, Luke takes us to a game in which the Hurricanes season came to a close.
So this goes back to my number one transaction too. The number one game for me in the history of this franchise is Game 5 against the New Jersey Devils in 2001. Game 4. I always get that confused.
Mm-hmm.
I always think that Hurricanes. Game 4 against the New Jersey Devils. Hurricanes are down 3-0. Game 3 is a bloodbath. Ron Francis gets cooked. Shane Willis gets cooked in Game 2. Scott Stevens is out there killing people. Sandis Ozolinsh fights Scott Stevens in Game 3, which was just an absolute gong show of fights and bad hockey and all that. Game 4, Hurricanes play their butts off, force overtime. First shift of overtime, Sammy Kapanen brings the puck across the line. I'm drawing a mental blank. Brind'Amour scores, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was it Brind'Amour at the tip? Yeah, okay. So Sammy Kapanen brings the puck across the line in the right wing. The ice had just been zammed. The puck gets stuck in a puddle. Kapanen has to double clutch. The double clutch gives Brind'Amour time to cut in front of Martin Brodeur. He tips the goal, and they win in overtime. That is in so many ways a franchise saver. If the Hurricanes get swept there, you got to remember they did not sell out either of those playoff games, right. The first two played in Raleigh. I think people forget what it was like here in 2001. Mm-hmm. The Halloween game in 2000, the announced attendance was 7,600. If there were 760 people in the building, I would be shocked. There were dire circumstances surrounding this franchise that get I don't want to say whitewashed. Things have changed a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a tremendous deal of uncertainty about whether or not this was going to work here. And people now don't understand how tenuous it was. And it was never more tenuous than that Game 4, because what that did was Hurricanes go back up to Jersey. They win Game 5. They come back for Game 6. It sells out. They get beat. They get a standing ovation for the last 2 minutes of regulation. It was the first real connection between the team and the city and the Triangle. It was the bond that was built, that built the bridge for everything that happened after that. And if Kapanen and Brind'Amour don't combine on that goal at the end of Game 4, none of it happens. And it's a very different future. I mean, maybe it's not. Maybe it's not. But I think you can draw a direct line from that to Brind'Amour re-signing, to 02, to 06, to everything else. And to me, that's the most important game in franchise history to me. That was the one where everything changed.
All of that is probably true. I am a believer in a chain. Life is a series of, it's a chain of events. Choices that you make lead to other choices that you make, or events that happen lead to other events that happen. So I agree. Without that, there might not be an 02, which begot 06 and all of that. So, yeah, I think that you could very easily be right about it.
It's a very fine choice.
And number one for you is Game 7, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Real quick backstory before I give you my number one. The reason I was at the King Street Bar and Grill. So it wasn't actually my anniversary yet. Our anniversary is August 16th. But we got engaged in Charleston the year before. So we had planned a trip, stayed in the exact same room, all that thing. And I realized about midway through the playoffs that, if the Hurricanes are in the Stanley Cup Finals in Game 6 or 7, like, we're going to be in Charleston. And I really could. I tried to change and push it back a week, but I couldn't get the same room and do all that. And the whole it was important for me to do that, to keep that trip. And then I figured, well, we're just going to have to deal with it. And I thought, well, maybe I can drive back for the game. Charleston's not that far. And the Hurricanes have a 3-1 lead. And Game 5 is at home. And I'm like, well, maybe they'll bail me out here and win the game.
Sorry about that. And
then, turnover. Look, the shot deflected off a stick and beat from way out, beat Cam Ward. And all of a sudden, I'm like, son of a... I'm not going back to Edmonton for Game 6. So we sent somebody else.
Didn't miss
much. Right. Well, I watched it. I watched it from the King Street Bar and Grill with Eric Cole in the lineup for some, other
than that.
Right. And, yeah, they had no chance in that game at all. Was never a chance. And then, I don't know, Aileen and I might have had a little bit of a disagreement about something, and I just didn't feel like I could drive back. In retrospect, she said, you should have gone. I'm like, yeah, at the time, I don't know. At the time, I don't think that would have been a good idea. But anyway, so I wasn't even there. I covered every single home game that year. Every single one except Game 7.
There's a great story. I mean, I did like an oral history of it a couple of years ago of just the way that the Hurricanes responded to losing games 5 and 6. Obviously the horrible turnover by he who shall not be named, just for purposes of protecting the innocent at the end of Game 5, because he did so much else.
Yeah,
and it was very uncharacteristic. And then the absolute capitulation in Game 6. And everything that had gone on, and I remember when I did that oral history, I think it was John Forsland. He said, "Look, Roddy and Wes sat together on the plane all year, and they would sit there and grumble about everything. And flying home from Edmonton, and the best part of it is the Hurricanes got to the airport first, watched the Oilers go through security ahead of them, and
big smiles on their faces.
Big smiles on their faces." and Forsland said those two guys sat there the whole way home grumbling about stuff like Statler and Waldorf. But you could see the resolution beginning there,
right?
That, all right, we're not going to screw this up. And Roddy's speech after Game 6, before they opened the room to the media, basically saying, hey, look, forget it. If we told you, the old stuff, if we told you we had a home Game 7 to win the Cup, forget about all this crap. Let's go do it. And Lavi telling me years later, he had started to walk into the room, saw Brindamore get up and start talking, and just turned and walked out. And knew that it was going to be handled. Like all those things like that were why that team was so special. So the groundwork for winning that Game 7 was really laid sort of with the total goose egg in Edmonton, the disaster there. And obviously, there were some distractions with Eric Cole coming back and taking a private jet to Denver for CAT scans on his neck and all the stuff that was going on behind the scenes. But I've always enjoyed that sort of the way that the Hurricanes were able to turn things around. And the stories from guys like Lavi saying, like, all right, we did the morning skate for Game 7. I'm like, I got nothing to do, and playing catch with one of his kids in the backyard. Or, Kevin Adams saying he went home, and Chris Huffine, the video guy, produced a DVD of his best games of the year. And he went home from the skate and watched that and then took a nap. Like, just sort of, you're in this incredible moment. Aaron Ward pulling over at the side of the road to puke on his way to the arena. He was so nervous. You prepare your whole career for that moment. You get there and you've got nothing to do all afternoon. So it's a crazy... There's no scouting to be done, right. Nothing you're going to learn, no workout you can do, no time in the ice tub. It's all just 8 hours of waiting. And I think, Mike, you once said it's worse for you than the players because you don't have any agency.
Yeah, they can go out there and do things. I did not eat that day.
All right. We have to wrap here, but my number one, I think speaks to why, I don't know, maybe why we're all here. Because it has 100% to do with the captain of that team and the head coach and the most important person in the franchise. And that's Game 3 in Montreal in the first round, where the series and the dream is over. They're not coming back from 3-0 down. They're down a goal mid-third period. And Sheldon Souray, was it Sheldon Souray? No, who was the defenseman for Montreal that Rod beat to the puck? And
I'd have to go look at that game story to remember. But
I could be right, I could be wrong. It doesn't really matter at this point. I just said it. But Rod scores the goal that gives them a chance.
In the slot, so sometimes going ahead is the tactic used by the offensive centerman.
Here's Rod Brindamore, chips the puck, he scores! Brindamore finally got one underneath Chris Huey, and the Carolina Hurricanes still have life. They pulled into a 1-1 tie.
Well, it wasn't a very pretty goal, but Brindamore, who's one of the hardest working guys in the NHL, shows you that a little hard work and some luck, because it may have gone off the Montreal forward doing the back-checking stick. right there, as he might have chipped it in. Rivet coming back. Anyway, it's 1-1 and Brind'Amour chips it by Souray, and then I really do think that Rivet punched the puck into the net.
And then I believe Eric Stahl won that game in overtime.
I believe it was Craig Rivet.
I thought about that as well, and I honestly disagree with you. I think we still would have won the series.
Okay. Red Sox came back and beat the Yankees. So
I think if we had if we've ever been in a 3-0 hole and had a chance, it would have been that one.
Okay, that's fair.
Interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. I just remember after the Hurricanes won Game 6, the sense of inevitability that they all sort of said, like, yeah, what Mike's speaking to, like, of course we were going to turn this around, and like, yeah, I mean, off the record, players were like, look, we can't win games with goaltending like we got in games 1 and 2. Mm-hmm. Like, that's just a reality. The kid came in and played, gave us a chance to win, and we did. So, obviously there was a lot going on there. But
there were a lot of games in that run. We could have gone to Game 2 against the Devils after was it Scott Gomez tip in that gave the Devils the late lead, and then with 10 seconds left, I don't know how that goal scored. You could do that a billion times.
John Madden won the faceoff too well.
Yeah, he did.
He did. He won it into his own zone, and it basically became a dump and chase for the Hurricanes. And Game 7 against Buffalo, another Rod Brind'Amour game where he basically lifted the team on his shoulders and said, we're going to do this. And I think we just mentioned Marty Gerber and how poorly he played against Montreal. Hurricanes don't beat Buffalo if he doesn't come in for Cam Ward and play his bag off.
Yep.
It didn't last, but they up in Buffalo, they needed that.
They needed him once.
He came in and did his job, and it obviously ended up being more to the rest of the way. But he did his part, not how he expected, but he did his part.
In all honesty, there have been so many games and moments and players and people who have made this such a special quarter century. How about not including the Canes' overtime win in Detroit of the 2002 Stanley Cup Finals, or the epic triple overtime loss in Game 3, or even their come-from-behind win over Edmonton in Game 1 of the Cup Finals in 2006. There were just too many to mention them all. Maybe there will be origin stories of some of these games in the future, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. For now, that puts a wrap on the first 25 years of Carolina Hurricanes hockey. With one Stanley Cup, another Prince of Wales trophy, 5 division titles, and 4 total trips to the conference finals, it's not a long list of great seasons, but I think you can safely say that the Hurricanes generally have made the most of their postseason runs. And hopefully, there are many more to come. Special thank yous to Jim Rutherford, Rod Brind'Amour, Kevin Adams, Brett Hedican, Eric Cole, Sean Hill, Ron Francis, Glenn Wesley, Jeff O'Neill, Chuck Caton, Trip Tracy, John Forsland, Jeff Gravely, Mark Roberts, Steve Stroud, Charlie Bryant, Tim Peeler, Mike Brown, Mike Sundheim, Luke DeCock, Rich Coppola, Mark Anderson, and John Buchagras for giving me the time to help tell some of these fascinating stories. Thank you to Jason Jennings for audio assistance, and a debt of gratitude to Rusty Helser for tireless work and support. The 25th anniversary Canes Corner podcast is part of the Capital Broadcasting Podcast Network, and it's brought to you by the Aluminum Company of North Carolina. Until next time, I'm Adam Gold.
You've been listening to the Canes Corner podcast with Adam Gold.
Hey, I want to drive the Zamboni. Yes, I do.
The Canes Corner podcast is a part of the Capital Broadcasting Podcast Network.